Assalamu alaikum. This is Moeed Pirzada, somewhere on the edge of Atlantic Ocean. It's pretty early morning, and there is also a sort of a shortage and deficit of light over here. So I look much more darker and a malign character than I am. But this brief video comment is for all those men and women, young men and women, who, according to their own statements, hate English, dislike English, don't like English, abhor English, or simply stating, if you interpret their statements, they are afraid of English. But before I go on to the subject and I try to convince them to join me on this discourse, whoever they are, wherever they may be in Pakistan or anywhere else in the world, they may be Palestinians or Iraqis or Saudis or Emiratis or Qataris or Africans. Before I go on to that subject, that provocative subject of hating English and what the English people have done, or English speaking people have done to the world, I first of all very quickly want to thank all of you, around 30,000 who have watched my last discussion here, which was in fact more than 1 hour long, with in the context of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Afghan Taliban, TTP, and relationship between Pakistan, America, and India in the region. This discussion was the discussion with ex-CIA station chief in Islamabad, Robert Grenier, Imtiaz Gul, the editor and the CEO of CRSS, a very known, prominent journalist in Pakistan, and an Afghan ex-diplomat, Umar Samad. Ambassador Umar Samad had worked with the administrations of Hamid Karzai and subsequently with Ashraf Ghani. He had been also a member of the High Peace Council. He had been an ambassador in Canada, in France, and with the European Union, and has worked with several of the US think tanks. But many of you who have watched this discussion, I hope, will agree with me that there is a discourse, a discussion which cannot be confined in Urdu. This kind of discussion with multiple perspectives is simply not possible within the confines of the Urdu language. And this is why I will again request you and remind you that if you're not afraid of English, and I will also explain why you should not be afraid of English, you should join me on this channel. Many subsequently, after watching this discussion, they liked the discussion and they said that they had saw a problem in comprehending it, in understanding it. They're not very familiar with the language, and I should have put it in my Urdu channel. Now, putting this kind of discussion in the Urdu channel, with my two Urdu channels, defeats the purpose, because I want to build up this discourse and I want this discourse to be identified in the English. But what I can do is, there is a constraint of there is a restriction, sort of a restraint of limitations in my case. But I will try to subtitle. I will try my best to subtitle some of these discussions, and then we'll put them on GBS News. But now I come to the touchy subject: hating English, afraid of English, disliking English, not liking English, by many people who basically say that English is not a language. Why we have our own language? First of all, I interpret this as a sort of allergy to English and also sort of a fear of English. There are a combination of the two things. And I think there has been a lot of munafiqat and hypocrisy on the part of Pakistan's principally English-speaking classes, who themselves got to English medium schools, even studied abroad, want their children to study in the best possible English medium schools, but they have created a language nationalism by creating an argument that, look, the Germans speak German, the French speak French, the Japanese have progressed, and the Chinese are progressing so much by using their own languages, and somehow or the other, English is not necessary, or English, the argument that English helps you to progress in the life is not necessarily true. This is a very long, a very complex kind of argument, very complicated argument. I'm not going to address that argument at the moment, but I would suffice it to say that this is actually full of hypocrisy when it comes from those people who themselves have been educated in the best English sources, have traveled and worked across the world, have studied across the world, and have created this Urdu nationalism. This is hypocrisy and munafiqat of a kind. I see this as part of the control paradigm of the Pakistan's English-speaking classes, Pakistan's state managers and ruling elite, that they basically want to restrain and control the power within the state of Pakistan. But that's a complex subject. What I want to emphasize in this video today is that English discourse, the kind of English discourse I am emphasizing is not about English accent, is not even about the pronunciation. Many people even point out, and I welcome that when they point out, Dr. Moeed, this was not the right pronunciation, and this word is not said in that way. I always humbly say, but I always agree that maybe that was the right pronunciation. But pronunciation does not matter. My accent is just a mix of all kind of accents. I, of course, developed my Pakistani style of speaking English. Then I lived in United States. Then I lived in UK. Then I lived back in Pakistan. And off and on, I have been interacting with people, with diplomats, with editors, with journalists all across the world. Living, traveling all over the world. So I have picked up their accents, and I also have to speak in a way so that they can understand me through the ears. It's very important. So when I am talking to congressional aides in the center of the Washington, or with a congressman or a senator who's a university and a college graduate and a very educated person, or I'm talking to an American mainstream author or a journalist who are coming from the best possible universities within the United States, my accent, my style of speaking, my stresses and emphasis of the words are very different from then when I'm in a McDonald's, I'm in a store, I'm in a food place or a coffee place, I'm in a high street trying to find my direction, and I'm talking with people who are of Hispanic background or the Middle Eastern background or the Indian and Pakistani background or Bangladeshi background. So accents keep on changing. Sometimes I can barely understand the English, but English is not about accent. English discourse is not about pronunciation. We are not. We don't have to take TOEFL or a language exam. We are not in a school or in a college or a university where our accent, or our pronunciation matters. In fact, there is a lot of fear that has been created by Pakistan's ruling elite and Pakistan's English-speaking classes. To them, English is a show-off. To them, English is a class consciousness. To them, English is a tool of control of the society. And, they have created this sort of guilt syndrome, or sort of, a feeling of, something of a deficiency in Pakistan's great majority of young men and women, that इसका इसे बोल नहीं रहा है, ठीक नहीं बोल रहा है, accent ठीक नहीं है, oh हो कैसी अंग्रेजी है देखो. You must have heard these kind of words, these epithets, these kind of statements, this kind of criticism so many times, that some politicians or someone's English is not very good, his accent is not very good, he's speaking English in a Jatka style or speaking English in a Punjabi style or whatever. All this is bullshit. All this is nonsense. English is for connecting with the world. The kind of English discourse I'm talking is for communication, is a lingua franca that connects us with the world. It remains to be explored that of all the major languages in the world, because English-speaking people were not the only colonizers and the imperial power. Turks were an imperial power at one point. The Ottomans were an imperial power. The French have been imperial power. The Spanish have been an imperial power. The Arabs have been imperial powers. And of course, they have an Arabic-speaking zone of more than 20 plus countries, 22 to 25 countries. I think 22 countries across the world speak Arabic, in which you can, speak Arabic on the street, or Arabic is the official language. And almost between 25 countries across the world where Spanish is the main language. Similarly, there are many countries where Russian really helps you, and there are about 22 to 25 countries where French is also the main language. But no language has been able to become an international lingua franca, which is understood in all across 180 countries, where you land as a total stranger, but you can connect to the people through the English and find your way. So English is a lingua franca. English is a connection, is a connecting thing, a tool with the world. This is how you have to look at the English. You don't have to be afraid of your accents and your pronunciations. I'll tell you something which is very interesting. 99% of the Pakistani and the Hindustani people speak a word which is called continue. I mean, if you listen to, the best possible Indian diplomats and professors, Pakistanis, they use the word continue. The actual word is not continue. The stress is different. The word is continue. So the stress comes on C-O-N-T, tin, continue. But does it matter? Does it matter? Does it ever reduces the worth of those Indian diplomats and authors or Pakistanis, very educated, who all, keep on, or the Arabs who speak English in their own way, or the East Europeans who speak English in their own way? In America, professors, academics, experts, doctors, physicians, surgeons are come across from different parts of the world. They all speak English in their own way. The important thing is to be able to communicate, to be able to connect. I will request once again you, I'll again request once again to join me in this discourse on this channel. And I end by telling you a very interesting anecdote from my personal life. When I first arrived in UK, in London, I was on a subway, and um, uh, but anyway, forget about it. It will become long. It's already 10 minutes long. I wanted to basically, again, I will tell you, I'll request you to join me on this discourse. Thank you.